So, how much ground bait do you actually get in a 2 kilo bag of Sonu? Let's get it in the bucket and find out. Okay, so you might be thinking, bit of a weird intro, Joe. There's 2 kilos of ground bait in this bag. It's 2 kilos, but it's not strictly true. Now, the Sonubait Super Crush range, as the name suggests, is all about like using crush pellets and crush fish meals and stuff. So the beauty of this stuff is it expands like unbelievably. Now, whether you pick whatever one in the Super Crush range you pick, the volume just swells up massively as soon as you add water. So I actually wanted to just show you a real live test of how much more ground bait you're getting for your money. Now it's $7.99 a bag this, which may seem a lot, but when you actually see the amount of ground bait you're getting from one of these bags once it's mixed up, you see it's actually still a really cheap product. So let's get it in there. I've got myself a 3 litre bowl. There's actually some marks in this bucket there's actually some marks in this bucket, litre marks, going up to 17 litres. So rather than do it in weight, because it's pretty irrelevant, you just want to know about the volume. So we've got the krill and squid here. We're going to see how much dry volume we've got. We'll add some water to it and then see how much we've got once it's mixed up and actually usable. And I wouldn't be surprised if it doubles in volume, but let's find out. That's enough of the talk. All right, let's get it in there. Beautiful. Oh, it stinks this. Look at this, I'm in the garden. We've got the little Tykes car here. We've got the kids slide in the background, but it's one of them times of year where I'm looking forward to it because summer's here, spring's here, it's getting warm, we can get some bait in. So, right, hang on. Rubbish. Classic on videos, that, innit? Never opened the bag properly, it takes them 10 minutes to get into it. Right, so let's get that into that little bowl first. Right, so that's 3 litres. I know roughly there's 6 pints of ground bait if you're using like a 3 pint tub, which a lot of anglers do. So that's 3 litres. So 4 litres. 4 litres of ground bait, I'm saying, of dry ground bait straight out of the bag. That's what you get in a 2 kilo bag. Okay, so we've got 4 litres of dry ground bait. So that's just a reference point in the future if you ever want to like batch it up in smaller amounts or anything. 4 litres in the 2 kilo bag. So that's dry. So let's just quickly wash it in here because I like to mix my ground baits backwards, as I've told you many times before. So I've got some nice water here. Now, if I've got 4 litres of ground bait, I'm gonna put 2 litres of water in just as a starting point. So half of this bowl, roughly. Now don't worry about it too much because obviously I can add more water to it to get it perfect, but I like to really saturate my Super Crush ground baits. I just think they perform better when they're like fully absorbed. So even if it'll look like a bit of a slop this in a minute, it won't be the end of the world, it'll still be fine. So let's get the water in first. So let's have a look at my mark, a bit more. So I'm looking for 2 litres of water. I've got them lovely little gauges on the side. So that's going to be a slop when I pour this dry ground bait in here. It'll be fine in a minute. There we go. So we'll get our hands in, slop it about a bit. I just find this a really easy way to mix because I can get a rough idea of how much water I need, slop it in. Because this is all like crushed pellets and stuff, it'll absorb it, no problem. As you can see, sloppy wet mess. But we'll come back to that in 20 minutes, have a look at it, and we'll see how much this ground bait's expanded and see how much ground bait you're actually getting for your money. Right, so while that ground bait is just absorbing all that water, it takes about 20 minutes, 30 minutes to fully absorb all that water. While it's doing that, we'll have a quick chat about the Super Crush ground baits because they're all, like they say, they've got that crushed pellet base to them, but some are even more fluffy than others. Super Crush Expander, for example, is 100% crushed expander pellets. So as soon as you add water to that, oh my God, you get so much of it. I mixed up a handful the other day when I went out fishing, and before I knew it, I had a 3 pint bait tub full of it. It just keeps growing and growing and growing. So if you've got a 2 kilo bag of Super Crush Expander, if you did this experiment with that, I mean, we'll find out the actual numbers for the krill and squid in a minute, but you would get so much ground bait. You know, if you're looking for something that represents really good value for money, using a lot of it down the edge, check out Super Crush Expander, because if it is purely a volume thing that you're after, you know, you're going to one of them venues where you're putting loads of ground bait in down the edge, then that Super Crush Expander mix will be perfect. like I say, you get a big bucket full of bait. Once it's all mixed up, you get a proper bucket full of ground bait. Don't get me wrong, all of them are the same. They all puff up a lot, but the number one puffer ground bait is that Super Crush Expander. It just grows and grows and grows in your bucket. So if you are wanting the maximum bang for your buck and you want as much ground bait as you can get for your $7.99, that Super Crush Expander is the one to look at. Right, so the ground bait's had probably 20 minutes now to absorb that water. Like I say, if I did it probably the night before, I'd probably get another batch of water in it to bring it round again, and it'd swell up even further. So if you want maximum volume, do this the night before and then fluff it all up, riddle it, let it stand, then look at it again in the morning. Keep it somewhere airtight, preferably in a bag or something, so that it doesn't go off overnight, and then come back to it the next morning, add a bit more water, just to obviously make it the consistency you want, and it'll grow even more. So if maximum volume is what you want, do it the night before and then remix it in the morning, and you'll get even more ground bait. So as you can see, it's actually set in there like a cake. You see that? Stinks lovely, that krill and squid. So what we've got to do, we've got to riddle it now. You could just get your hand in there, fluff it up, and it'd be fine. But I like to give it a quick riddle through a big riddle. You can feel the moisture in there. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to break it up and loosen it up. Look at that, you get like big lumps in it like that. But watch this in a minute once I've done it. You can already see. So we had 4 litres of dry ground bait, didn't we? Let's see how much, once we've put this through a riddle, how much we've actually got to use. And then we'll count up how many big pots worth of ground bait that is. Okay, so the moment of truth. We've got the riddle. And what we've got now is 7 litres of ground bait. So we had 4 litres of dry ground bait. Once it's mixed, 7 litres. And that's the krill and squid. I reckon if you did this with Super Crush Expander, probably have 8 litres, maybe even 9 at a push. And I dare say if I left this overnight, came back to it tomorrow, I'd probably have 8 litres in here as well, because it just gives it that bit longer to take on the water. But as you can see, great result. Hasn't doubled in volume, but not far away. And that is just beautiful ground bait. Look at it. It's mixed perfectly. So what did I do? I had 4 litres of dry ground bait and I added 2 litres of water, and it's just mixed to perfection, I'd say. Banged it through a riddle. Brilliant. So loads of ground bait, half a bucket for sure for your 2 kilos. So let's actually, as I said, let's get the big pot. We'll count out how many big pots of ground bait there is. So about 23 big pots of ground bait you get out of that bag. So if you think about it, think about your session, think about your margin fishing in particular, it's going to be pretty rare you're going to use 23 big pots full of ground bait if you actually think of it like that. I can't remember many sessions where I've had to put that amount of bait in. Very, very rarely you'll be able to go on the edge like with a long time to go, and you might feed that much bait, but in all honesty, that's rare. You know, especially if you put in corn and other baits with it, pellets and stuff, it's going to increase your volume in that way as well. So if you think about that, if there's 23 big pots of ground bait, what are you actually going to feed? If you think about your match and plan it ahead, half a bag of ground bait probably is going to be enough, and you're not going to end up throwing loads of it away. So just bear that in mind. It's a lot of ground bait, that 7 litres of mixed ground bait. It's a lot of ground bait. Like I say, it's actually, I can see it's getting bigger as I'm doing it. You know, the more air's getting to it. So you're going to have loads of bait. And if you did that trick where you mix it the night before and then mix it again in the morning, you're going to have even more volume. So bear that in mind. 2 kilos of ground bait for $7.99. It sounds a lot, but you're actually getting so much bait for your money. And I think that little hack and just bearing them pointers in mind and probably shows you how one of those bags doesn't need to be mixed up for one session. You probably get 2, maybe even 3 sessions out of a bag, depending on what style of fishing you're doing. So even though those 2 kilo bags look a bit daunting because they're so big, they actually represent really good value for money.